Leviticus chapter 12. We finished regarding the dietary law. And if you recall yesterday, the dietary law really is to teach Israel how to be holy, how to be different from the way they live. They will be shown to be different from all other nations. And the call was that God is holy. That's why his people must be holy. And so he gave those instructions of what can eat, what cannot eat, the touching of the dead body, the carcasses, and all these things have to do with clean and unclean, and thereby holy and not holy. And these clean and unclean, and every time you read that, the first thing needs to come to mind is that it has everything to do with God's instruction with regards to coming into the tabernacle, or later on the temple, and doing things in the tabernacle, whether it's offering, whether it's the people, whether it's the priest. Everybody must be maintained as clean and holy. Otherwise, they cannot carry out their functions in the tabernacle. Now, this whole concept of holiness is actually quite foreign to many people. God insists on that because he is holy, and he will not accept anything unclean within his presence in the tabernacle. Now, coming to chapter 12, he begins this rules regarding clean and unclean concerning the normal day life. Now, a lot of people tend to think that if it has only to do with the sacrifices in the tabernacle and the people there, what has the daily life got to do with clean and unclean? Well, God requires us to know so that anybody who is deemed unclean should not participate or go near the tabernacle. So now let's look at chapter 12. Chapter 12 says this: Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel." Now, in this case, we're now discussing the issue of the Isha, all right? The woman. So let's take a look at how it is expressed here. And then next time when you read the Bible, you should be able to see this pattern of expression. Conceive and born. So the first idea is conception. The conception here is to have scattered seeds. That's the idea. Scattered seeds. So in other words, you can say pregnant. That's conception. Born a child would be to give birth. So these are the ways that the Hebrew people express. Conception, to get pregnant, and to bear a child is to give birth, which means that these two are two very distinct verbs, two very distinct actions, and it's always described this way. When you have conceived, bear a child, and bear a child, generally it would be understood that that would be twins. One came out, another came out without another conception. So that's how the Hebrew people express childbirth. So first to conceive, then to bear. Now, if this woman bears a male child would be a boy, right? So the rule of unclean would be 7 days. 7 days. As in the days of her customary impurity. Now, these are all big words. You should read this as menstruation. So in the days where a woman menstruates, she is considered unclean, right? She is unclean. Nothing negative about that. It's just that in that condition, she is not allowed to go into the tabernacle. So just like in the days of her menstruation, for 7 days she'll be unclean. So on a regular period, she'll be unclean for 7 days. In the after childbirth, also 7 days if it's a male child. On the eighth day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. So always remember, the male child must be circumcised on the eighth day. There is no discussion about the female child. So the male child is subjected to circumcision, and only the male child as a sign of the covenant with Abraham. And then she shall continue in the blood of her purification for 33 days. Now, this idea of her purification means her cleansing. Her cleansing. This would be the idea of a ritual, I would say, right? A ritual for 33 days after from the 8th day onwards, okay? And this is for childbirth, during which time she shall not touch anything hallowed. This would be holy, right? Or come into the sanctuary until the days of her purification are fulfilled, which is 33 days. Now, why would a woman go into the sanctuary? So we have two types of women. So just for discussion's sake, we have from the Levites, the women. And then we have the rest, also women. Okay? And what happens is that the Levites women actually go to do things in the sanctuary because she's a Levite. Apart from that, the rest are not supposed to go in. Okay, that much I think is important. In verse 5, verse 4, sorry, in verse 4. Okay, and this would be the holy place. This could also mean the tabernacle in the vicinity. All right. Now, carrying on to verse 5. Still about the childbirth. If she bears a female child, now she'll be unclean for 2 weeks, and that would be 14 days, which is 7 days more than a male child. Remember the male child, after 7 days, the 8th day, there was the circumcision. So in this case, it'll be straight 2 weeks, as in her customary impurity, which would be the menstruation, is in verse 5. Menstruation. And she shall continue in the blood of her purification for 66 days for a female child. So this would be the period where the woman is not allowed to enter into the tabernacle. When the days of her purification are fulfilled after these 66 days, so whether earlier on it was for another 33 days, this would be 66 days. So whichever that may be, whether son or daughter, she shall bring to the priest a lamb of the first year as a burnt offering. This is a thanksgiving. And becoming a burnt offering means it will have to be burnt, right? And a young pigeon or a turtle dove as a sin offering to the door of the tabernacle of the meeting. And he shall offer it before the Lord. Who is the he? It would be the priest, right? He shall make an atonement for her from the impurities, right? And she shall be clean from the flow of her blood. That would signify the end of the ritual. And this is the instruction, the Torah. For her who has born either a male or a female. So for the woman who gives birth has a law. That's what we call a law. And that is why whenever people say, oh, you cannot do all the laws, the 613 laws. Of course, you can't do all 613 laws. There are certain laws that's only for women. And so that a lot of people, when they say you cannot do the law, have no idea what the law comprises. And so in Leviticus chapter 12, we can see for the first time there is a specific law with regards to women. In verse 8, God also understands if she's not able to bring a lamb. Now, to bring a lamb means that you need to have a flock. And if you are poor and you don't have a flock, then she may bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons instead of 1 lamb and 1 pigeon. So now you bring 2, one as a burnt offering and the other as a sin offering. In the same way, the priest shall make atonement for her and she will be clean. And this will be the end of the ritual of purification. So this is the whole aspect of the law concerning childbirth. And whenever we talk about clean, unclean, the moment you know that when something is unclean, she is not able to participate or to go to the temple or go to the tabernacle and present an offering of any sort, right? Until the end of the ritual of purification. Now, these are all intentional. I'm not so sure whether there's any medical grounds for this, but it appears that in the purpose of clean and unclean, holy and unholy, the women are also instructed to observe this ritual of purification. So with this, we end chapter 12. Any questions?
The Israelites women also have confinement after delivery.
I am not so sure whether there is such a thing called confinement. Confinement is very much an Oriental thing. I've not read about that, to be honest. Yeah.
But they do have the period considered unclean. It's
Yes.
a bit like the Chinese that they do
Could
not.
be.
They don't wash the clothing mixed with others.
Yes, unclean. Because of the blood. Possible, but this is a ritual. I think the point that I wanted to make for most people to understand is that there are specific laws for specific occasions and for specific people. So the laws given to Israel is not uniform across the board. And people must realize that these so-called laws or Torah, they are not like our, how should we say, our country laws. These are instructions given by God how to conduct themselves before God.
But they do consider that they regards the woman after birth as unclean.
Yes. Yes.
And that means a woman during menstruation also is considered unclean.
Unclean, yes. For 1 week. So this is what there is a law of menstruation, there is a law of childbirth. So there are specific laws that applies only for women. So the men actually most people don't even realize that there is such laws. So the laws of Israel is to give to specific people for specific occasions for specific purposes.
To us, maybe it is not, but it is a custom.
Mm. The Chinese have
Chinese
their own Chinese way of handling postnatal. I think the verse 8 would be interesting mainly because God wants every woman to realize that childbirth is something to thank God for.
But they don't consider it as a Thanksgiving offering.
A burnt offering is a thanksgiving.
Oh.
A sin offering is to seek atonement in the event she did something during her period of impurity which she shouldn't do. Okay, so let me just put this down here. There's a thanksgiving, giving thanks to God, and there's also an atonement. The atonement is for the period of being unclean, right? That maybe there was certain things that the woman may have done that was against this law. So it's not a big thing, but God says still you have to seek for atonement and then give thanks to God. So there are two, right? 1, 2. So we always need to understand. And so God wants them to, even for the things that they are not sure whether they have broken or not, to atone for it, so that in their time of carelessness or unknowing, it's atoned for, it's covered.
Okay.
Because, sometimes, especially when you're in the wilderness and you can't be so sure that everything is according to the requirement. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Pastor,
Yes.
sorry. The other day we were talking about the water being unclean and all that. So in that
Yesterday.
context, how do we define it as unclean?
If you go back to chapter 11, it's because those are unclean animals and a carcass and the parts drop into the water. So the principle is anything unclean touching something that is clean makes the clean thing unclean.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay.
So that's why the in chapter 11 is very specific. When there is a carcass, by definition, a carcass is an unclean thing, especially it's an unclean animal. In other parts, you also see that when somebody dies, you're not supposed to touch the dead body, and that would be unclean. So that one is important. The principle has always been this: when something is considered unclean, and someone who is clean touches the unclean, then the clean becomes unclean and has to be cleansed. Yeah.
Okay.
Good catch.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll see you next week then.
Okay.
All right.
Bye. Thank you, Pastor.